All right, Claire, okay if I go ahead and kick things off officially?
Yes.
All right, cool. Good afternoon, everyone, if you are on the East Coast, and good morning if you are on the West Coast or somewhere in between. Thanks for being here for today's Bloomerang webinar, where we are going to be talking all about fundraising silent auction items. Thank you so much for being here. Sorry for the late start, but we got a good one in store for you today. My name is Stephen Shattuck. I'm the Chief Engagement Officer over here at Bloomerang. And I'll be moderating today's discussion, as always. Just housekeeping items before we get going. Want to let you all know that we are recording this presentation. We'll get you that recording, as well as the slides in case you didn't already get those. You should have those already, but if you didn't get them, we'll get them in your hands, no worries. And we're going to try to leave some time at the end for Q&A, so please use that chat function right there on your screen. I know a lot of you already use that. Appreciate it. Send in your questions. Don't sit on those hands. We're going to try to save some time at the end to answer as many as we can. You can do the same thing on Twitter. I'll keep an eye on the Twitter feed over there. And if you have any problems with the audio through your computer, before giving up on us completely, try dialing in by phone if you can, if you don't mind doing that. There's an email from ReadyTalk, which is our webinar provider, that has a phone number in there just for you that you can use. And if this is your first Bloomerang webinar, I just want to say a special welcome to you all. In addition to doing these Thursday webinars, we also provide donor management software, which you can check out on our website. Don't do that now. Wait until an excellent presentation from this gal, Claire Axelrad, one of my favorites. She has been, we made a kind of a special arrangement with Claire to do more webinars than usually we have from one person a year. So I'm very happy to welcome back Claire. How's it going?
Good. Are you ready for me to start?
I'm ready. I just want to brag on you if people will endure my voice for 30 more seconds. If you guys don't know Claire, you got to know Claire. You got to follow her blog, sign up for her newsletter over at clarification.com. You're going to see why she has all these credentials from her presentation here. She's got 30 years of experience. She was named AFP's Outstanding Fundraising Professional of the Year. She's a CFRE instructor. She's a frequent conference speaker, frequent webinar guest, just a wealth of knowledge and one of my favorites. I get to see her this weekend in New Orleans, so hopefully you're all jealous of that. But I'm going to hand things over finally now, Claire, to tell us all about those silent auction items. So take it away, my friend.
Okay. Well, so I have a kind of a love-hate relationship with events. That being said, silent auctions can be a lot of fun. They also can be a lot like that little girl with the curl in the middle of her forehead. When she's good, she's very, very good, but when she is bad, she is horrid. So I want to just start by launching a quick poll just to find out how many of you have run a silent auction in the past and how many of you this would be your first one. So do we have that, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up now. So just click yes or no on your screen, or chat it in. But if you click it, we'll know what you said. Looks like they're coming in now. Lots of yeses. Yeses are winning. Looks like 4-1.
Oh wow. Okay, great.
Yeah. I'm going to pull up the results
there. This will be helpful for everyone because I've run a lot of auctions and I've run some bad ones. Okay, we ready to?
I think so. Looks like 80% yes and 20% no. So some experience here, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I wish I was here. I wish I was with all of you in person so I could ask you about some of your experience. But here's an idea. I think I don't even have to read this. But this is the problem with a lot of silent auctions from the perspective of your guest. And I'm going to have here's a slide about why you should listen to me. I'm going to skip right over that since we started late and Stephen told you. Today we're going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of silent auctions. And we're going to look at all of these things here on the slide, which I'm not going to read because I know that you can read. And we're going to go over them one by one. But these are all of the things that need to go into your auction, and depending on how well or how poorly you execute, your auction can be very, very good, kind of bad, or really, really ugly. So let's kind of begin with what makes an auction good overall. A good auction is part of the entertainment. The winners walk away feeling like they actually won something. They truly feel like they got lucky, not that they paid something for it. And so they kind of look forward to the prospect of coming every year and walking away with some kind of a gift, something that they'd have bought anyway. And this way they get to get it and also do really good for your organization. Or maybe it's just like an incredible bargain, or maybe it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience that they'd never have had access to anyplace else. So they really look forward to coming to this every year because it's like a big win. It's an opportunity to bid on these great experiences and maybe get some bargains. Now, the bad one can be just a big time-sucking distraction. Unless you begin with a real plan about what is going to be your cost and what is going to be your benefit, what is success going to look like. And you really don't want to have your staff or your volunteers spending hours collecting items that aren't going to sell well. It takes just as much time to solicit non-saleable as saleable items, but there's less reward. And you only have so many staff and volunteers. They only have so many hours in a day. And if you waste those hours soliciting items no one wants, you're losing the opportunity to solicit more valuable gifts. And we're going to talk a bit more later on what to do if you end up with low value, not easily saleable items. So you want to get your priorities straight in terms of how you're bringing in your revenue and assess whether having someone solicit an auction item is your best opportunity or if there are other alternative opportunities. So, for example, if volunteer gets Joe CPA, who nobody knows, to give you a $750 tax preparation package, then maybe no one knows Joe, no one trusts Joe. CPA is pretty important, so they don't buy it, and you get nothing out of this. And then Joe gets ticked off because nobody wanted his service, and you would have been better off just asking Joe to make a $250 gift for a listing in your ad book. So just this is kind of an overarching idea to carry in that you're fooling yourself to think it's better to solicit $100,000 worth of items in value if you only get $10,000 out of it. You've been better off trying to seek $10,000 in direct donations or ad revenue or sponsorships because that takes less time and nobody ends up with wounded feelings. Which, speaking of which, brings us to the ugly. That can be really depressing. It's not fun if there's nothing you want to bid on. That depresses your guests, it depresses event revenue, and it depresses further donations from items that don't sell well. And I don't know if you've all had this happen to you. I didn't get these exact items brought into me from volunteers, but I got pretty darn close. You know, I got the vintage purses that were hanging around in their closet with a whiff of tobacco and some really, really ugly art. And, you know, they may think that it's worth that much. They may have paid that much for it, but it doesn't mean it's worth even a fraction of that to any of your guests, unless your guests happen to be knowledgeable collectors who appreciate the worth of these items. To most people, they're just unappealing, used items. So, what does it take to create a really good result? Well, it takes all of these things up here on the screen. It takes committee members with connections to different networks. It takes writing up your items well so they're enticing It takes how you set up your venue, your signage. It takes how you set up your pricing and your bid increments, the process you choose for bidding, the checkout process. We're going to kind of not talk about those things, although I'm happy to answer your questions in the end about those things. But it really, really hinges on items that sell well with your audience. And there's 4 key audiences you need to satisfy with your item. The bidders want stuff that they're interested in. Otherwise, it's no fun. And it's also no fun for them if all of the items are out of their price range. So you want a mix of items. The auction donors, if they are in attendance and no one bids on their item, they feel really bad. If they're not there and no one likes their item, that could be bad for their reputation, because people will remember, oh yeah, they donated that really ugly pot. And yes, sometimes donors will ask you how well their item sold. And then it can be really depressing for the auction solicitors, because if they brought in a bunch of items and they see that they aren't really selling, or they're selling well below their value, they feel demoralized. And then what happens? They scapegoat you for not doing a better job promoting those items. Because certainly it couldn't be because they brought in a mani-pedi for a salon that's 45 minutes outside of your geographic area because they have a vacation home there. No, that's not why. It's because of what you did. So you don't want that. And then your organization, you have to satisfy your own organization. And part of the problem, of course, is if you have a bunch of items that don't sell well, you're not going to raise that much money. And also, really important, is if people don't have a good time and they don't bid on stuff and they don't walk away feeling like they're winners, then they won't return again. So let's begin with the items. My favorite items that you don't even have to solicit that sell really well. And that's Fund a Need, which you're probably familiar with. Sometimes it's called Gifts from the Heart. And these are mission-related items. And if you don't tap into the power of mission-related items, then you're missing a huge boat. And there's a lot of ways that a lot of people do this at a live auction, but you can do this at a silent auction by setting up a table in the middle where you have all your items. You see over here on the left, it says sign with Sid table. That is a big photo of the fires in Napa and Sonoma County last fall. And then there's a bid sheet in front where you can write down if you want to fund recovery for that. This is a gala that I just went to a couple months ago at an organization where I ran their gala for 22 years, and now it's been like 10 years out, and I'm kind of checking in on how they're doing things. And you can put these cards at the table. You can, have a box that people put them in at the end of the night, but you can also just keep them around the table. You can have 5 or 6 or 7 different fund a needs. So you can have, it might say $50 buys 1 hour of home care for a senior. And then people write down their name and their bid. And some people might put down $100 or $250 because they're buying more than one. Then they may go around the table and see if the next one interests them. $35 buys art supplies for 1 classroom for a year. So they can buy as many as they want. And I have found generally these sell really well. They're really great for people who come and don't really want a lot of stuff, but they're more than willing to make a donation at the event. And they kind of want to because they see everybody else walking around and they're like, oh, there's nothing I want to buy, but this is a good thing to do. And it's especially good when you have attendees who are guests of their friends, or maybe their employers bought a table, so they haven't paid for their ticket. And if you do a good job inspiring them at the event about your cause, they're kind of primed to support you. So you don't want to waste that. And so this is a good thing to have as an outlet for their newly awakened feelings of generosity towards your cause. Okay, other items that tend to sell at or above donor value. So food sells for face value because everybody eats. So they really haven't lost anything, and it's going to a good cause. Here on the left of the screen, I show you something called Grub Grab. And that is if you have limited space to display items and you get a lot of restaurant gift certificates, you can put them all together. And what these people did was they had them all go at face value. And it was almost like a competition, like I'm going to get over to that screen as soon as possible so I can pick off my favorite restaurant first. I've heard these called Foodie Frenzy, Restaurant Row, Dine and Dash, Food to Go. So I always ask people to collect restaurant gift certificates because they're total winners. The other thing that tends to sell really well, so what kind of questions do you ask people? This seems really obvious. So since we're a little late on time, I'm going to let you just read this. But a lot is when you have your committee together is you really want to help them to brainstorm by asking these kinds of questions of them, because anything related to food tends to sell really, really well. Wine. So do you know a vintner? Could you bring in a bottle of wine? Could you get or host a tasting? I'm sure that some of you have tried like board packages of wines. Those work really well, where you just ask everybody on the board to bring in a bottle and you create a cellar. And you can have multiple cellars. And so I'm going to go through this because it's pretty self-explanatory. Gift certificates for places people shop frequently. Frequently is the important part. So even supermarkets, again, I'm going to buy $100 worth of grocery. May as well have the money go to you. Are there, in where you are, the particular malls or neighborhoods where people shop a lot, where maybe a group of volunteers would like to go together to solicit those items, and then you can put a shopping spree together? Hardware stores, home improvement stores, car washes, I find, sell really, really well because everybody washes their car. And then popular clothing, jewelry, and accessory brands. So these are, Macy's or Banana Republic or Lululemon, like stuff that everybody goes to, not esoteric boutiques. They're going to have a pretty limited appeal to people. Okay, so what sells at close to donor value? Vacations, sporting events, entertainment, and gift packages of all of the above. So what do you ask your committee to see if you can tease out of them whether they have any connections to these kinds of things? So is there a place that they say a lot? Or do they own a timeshare? Or do they have a second home? Do they rent on Airbnb? Maybe could give you a week. Are they close to a travel agent? Not so many people use travel agents anymore, but there are people who do. Do you know a local innkeeper? So you're trying to elicit, how are you really connected? Like you may not think that you have a connection, but think a little bit harder. And then performing arts, same kinds of questions. Do you have season tickets? A lot of people on your board will have a full season, but they won't attend all of the performances. Or they might be on the board of a performing arts organization or a big donor of one of them. So you want to ask them, could you get some tickets, or could you get us a behind-the-scenes tour, or could you get us lunch with the director, or maybe a person could have an opportunity to be a conductor for an evening. Or could you get people in to attend a play reading or a dress rehearsal? Or would some of the musicians come and do a performance at somebody's home? And then you can package that with some swag so that it makes a nice display. But, basically the tickets are the gift. The other thing that you can do is exchange with other organizations. So if you're a symphony and somebody on your board is also on the board of the food bank, maybe you could give the food bank some symphony tickets for their auction, and they can give you a behind-the-scenes warehouse tour of the food bank for your auction. So that's another way to kind of get your committee members thinking about connections they have that might not seem connected, but could be. All right, what about getting items related to sports? Because those tend to sell pretty well as well. So what kind of connection do they have to some sports venue? First of all, season tickets is obvious, and could they offer some of those up? But maybe they could get you something special because they know somebody there, like an autograph ball or a batting girl for the day or a dugout visit or a field tour, behind-the-scenes tour, or a chance to play hoops with a team member. So get them thinking that way. Also ask them, do they belong to an exclusive club, golf course, tennis club? Could they get, a day to play on that course or a session with the pro? So these are professional sports. Then there's also hobbies, avocations. And people love to do these kinds of things as well. So ask them if they know a special instructor who could teach somebody to do something. For adults and kids, kids take lessons everywhere, so those can be really good. They're always taking classes. But, do they know someone who could teach horseback riding or figure drawing or glass blowing or pottery, car racing? The auction that I did for 22 years, we always got a certificate to take this racing class at a raceway that was about an hour away, but for some reason that was super competitive, super popular. Everybody wanted to learn how to do fast race car driving. You can also do things like a docent tour at the museum. Maybe you've got volunteers who are docents. You could do a gourmet cooking class for couples, something like that. If you've got an artist, maybe they could offer to do a sketch of the donor's home. So things that are donor-centric, people like as well. Wedding photography. All right. Priceless experiences. These are the final category that sell really well. Once-in-a-lifetime types of things that people couldn't get anywhere else. And they can be also really priceless things that happen in your own community if you're not able to, connect to any kind of celebrity type of things, or personal services from people on your staff or board. So the once in a lifetime, you want to ask them, okay, who are you connected to? 6 degrees of separation. We're all connected to somebody. So let's think, could you get a walk-on part in a sitcom? Could you get us box tickets for the World Series, tickets to one of the late-night talk shows? Here in San Francisco, there's a church that does meals for the homeless a lot, Glide Memorial, and every year they auction off lunch with Warren Buffett because his wife was connected to them at some point, I think, and they get $1 million just for that one item. I know that's a little bit of an outlier, but you never know who somebody knows if you just really keep prompting them. Can they get you backstage passes to a hot concert? I know somebody here who works for a high-tech company that has concerts every month for their employees. So he got us tickets, an autographed script, a seat in the broadcast booth. I once somebody was connected on Wall Street and got the opportunity to ring the opening bell on the stock exchange. So you don't want to just go, does anybody have a once-in-a-lifetime experience? You do want to try to kind of tease it out, especially when you're in a group, people will play off of each other. Okay, what else can you ask to get once-in-a-lifetime experiences? So think locally and say, hey, who do you know here Do you know the mayor? Do you know a supervisor? Could somebody spend the day shadowing them or having lunch with them? Do you know anybody on the local news? Could we get a ride on a traffic helicopter? Could we get a shopping spree with a professional buyer? Could somebody at the park do a nature walk with somebody? Does anybody here own a yacht, a private jet? Can we get some time there? Does anybody have free VIP parking? Sometimes people do. Impossible to get reservations. So one of the best restaurants in the country is the French Laundry here in wine country. And it's impossible to get reservations even if you start calling at midnight a month beforehand. They're already gone in an instant. So once we got somebody who knew the chef, and we didn't even sell the meal, just the reservation. Okay. There's one other question to ask to get one-of-a-kind experiences that can be popular, especially when your group knows each other well, like a school. And many of you have probably done these, babysitting by a favorite teacher, but what about like a certificate of 4 hours of IT support from your IT specialist? Everybody has that. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people. Violin lessons from the first chair. Could a bunch of your parents get together and organize a clam bake or some kind of a dinner that people would buy seats at, so a lot of people could participate? And then student art projects for schools are super, super popular. And even if you're a social service organization that works with kids, you can sometimes do this. And you can get a ton of ideas for student art projects by going on Pinterest. And I actually have my own board that I've collected with some of these ideas. If you go to Charity Clarity, Fundraising Silent Auctions. So that's just a little tip. Okay. There is one final question you can ask to get a one-of-a-kind experience that sells well. And that is, do you know somebody who might do something wild and crazy for the right bid? And again, this works really well with organizations where people know each other well, where they might want to see the head of school or the executive director shave their head or be dunked in a dunk tank. But, or they might also say, well, I'll go bungee jumping, or, there's all sorts of things they might do. All right. What doesn't sell well? This is important because if you stuff your auction with too many of these items, you're just not going to do well, and people are not going to have that much fun. So I talked about Joe Blow CPA. If you have professional services where the person is not very well known and, you've got 1 hour of interior design and nobody knows how many hours they're going to really need to do what they need to do, and they don't even know if this person is any good, they're not going to bid very much on that. And the same tends to hold true for things that at first blush sound good, like an hour of Pilates. People will get that from their own Pilates instructor. But if nobody else knows that instructor, it can kind of flop. Chiropractic sessions, financial consultations. They might sell, probably not close to donor value, and might not sell. Art. It's very subjective. So unless it's specifically an art auction, I would caution against having too much art unless you have a crowd of art lovers there. You're really relying on the serendipity of somebody being there really loving it. And even if they do, all too often that's the only person who wants it. So you just get one bid. It goes to the lowest bidder. And whatever you do, you want to stay away from becoming a dump for old prints that your board members no longer want. They basically use you as goodwill. They clean out their walls and bring you this stuff. It takes up a lot of space, and if you have too much of it, people just sort of start to feel like, they had a lot of stuff I didn't really want. Same rules apply for antiques. If only a collector would appreciate its value, you're not going to get anywhere near the market price. All right, let's look at some in-between items. So jewelry, clothing, and accessories, I want you to welcome them into your auction, but judiciously, not too many. What's good about them is while they are as subjective as art, they're generally at a lower price point, so they're more within the reach of more of your bidders. Plus, some folks really love these items, and they get disappointed if there isn't any jewelry and fashion and stuff like that at the auction. And it also adds some visual appeal at your auction because just having gift certificates can be a little bit boring. So just a few common sense is that for clothing, try to stick to one size fits most, or if you have a choice of small, medium, and large, pick medium. And again, the gift certificates, like if Macy's wants to give you a jacket or a $100 gift certificate, go for the $100 gift certificate or ask for it. All right, so how do you get the good stuff? I like to have a committee of volunteers, all of whom have somewhat different networks. And here's something that might be counterintuitive. This is a committee where the larger the committee, the better, because you don't need to bring them together a lot of time. This is an auction committee. And when you do bring them together, you want them to brainstorm and feed off of each other. And so I have had committees as large as 50 people, believe it or not. Usually when I have a brainstorm meeting, about 20 people show up. And then at the next meeting, it's a different 20 people. So it tends to work out. And if your volunteers are spread out a bit geographically, you can have different meetings for people that are like in different communities. You can also brainstorm silently with people who can't attend a meeting just by sending them a form and asking them to complete it. And we're going to talk about what might be on that form. It's the same thing that would be on the walls in your brainstorming meeting. But when you do it silently, you really do want to follow up with that person by phone and talk to them, because you want to be able to ask those questions that get them thinking a little bit more expansively, and otherwise they're not going to give you all of their good ideas. They need a little bit of coaxing. So you want to brainstorm different categories of donations and donors by having, I just really like to use an easel with a piece of paper and start writing. And so I think of the categories, like let's start with restaurants, and everybody start pulling out restaurants you think you might be able to get a gift certificate at. And then when we finish with the restaurants, we pull that off of the easel, tape it up on the wall in the room so it's still there, and then we move on to wineries. And then we move on to the next thing. And you always ask them also if they can think of another category. I like to feed it with a number of categories of things that I know sell well, but sometimes they'll think of another category, and that's really, that's great. So what do you do to make sure that you hold people's feet to the fire and they actually help you get this stuff, and they're not just putting up names of things that they have no connection with? You don't leave the room, until you put somebody's name next to the item. So a pie-in-the-sky idea like, let's go get a walk-on part on a TV show, is really worth less than a piece of pie on the ground unless someone volunteers the fact that they've got a connection and they'll pursue that gift. So you just go, sometimes they'll tell you right when you're writing it down. Oh, I go to the Ritz-Carlton all the time. They'll give me something. You write down Susan's name. But sometimes they're like, well, let's do, a day on the bay. But they haven't really said, that they'll do it. So you go around and say, like, who can do this? So you write a name next to everybody so that you can then follow up one-to-one with them and talk about what's going to be their plan of attack, and then you can check in with them. And for these brainstorming sessions, honor the competitive spirit. So people really like to win. And I have found that when people work in groups, it often ignites their competitive spirit. And when they get a bit competitive, they volunteer more. And I remember one brainstorming meeting where one member in the group said, I can offer a meal cooked by my private chef. And then the person sitting next to them said, oh, I can do that too. And then this prompted another member to say, I can do that too, and I can donate our dining room and have my driver pick people up. And I was just sitting there letting them go on and thinking, man, I never even knew any of these people had private chefs and drivers. So let them play a little bit. And then often I have found that having them work in teams in terms of soliciting the items and selling the items at the auction and offering awards to the teams who say bring in the most items or whose items sell for the greatest percentage of their donor value, that gets them really competitive. You make one person kind of the team captain, you give the team a cutesy name, and they kind of utch on the people on their team. The added benefit is that these people have a lot more fun. They enjoy being on the committee. They don't find it to be a chore. They don't feel like they've got nothing to add. And then they will come on again next year. They will recruit new people to join you. That's how you get to a 50-person committee. You know, you maybe start this year with 20, and then it grows. And then when you're at the auction, they try to get their friends to bid on the items that they secured so that their team will win. All right, a little bit about the balance of the items that you have. So the reason I've got all these cow figurines up here is because my grandmother collected cows. And she collected cows from her 17th birthday until she died when she was 80. Needless to say, she had thousands of cow figurines in her house. And they were stuffed on shelves. And some of them were very, very valuable. They were Wedgwood, they were antiques, they were one-of-a-kind art pieces that people got for her. And then others were stuff that was bought at the 5 and dime. And they were all stuffed in there together. You couldn't tell the value one from another, and it was just too overwhelming. So junk crowds out value. No one notices that you've got a number of really great items if there's a whole bunch of junk in there that they're not interested in, because they just start going through the tables, they notice that it's nothing that they want, and they kind of stop and they start talking to their friends. So you get low prices. Also, with too many items to bid on, competition is suppressed because everybody can get something, and they, just put one bid there and they get it, and it becomes a real bargain hunter bonanza. You get low prices. If you have too few items, no one gets a bargain. So that's not as fun. They get a little frustrated. There's nothing here good to bid on, or everything's already bid up. So remember, you've only got so much space to display items. If you get too much stuff, don't sweat the small stuff. Now, I really try to set expectations with people early on. It depends on your crowd, of course, but a lot I've found, just don't get a gift certificate for less than $100. If you get a $15 pizza certificate, think about it. I mean, somebody spent more than $15 soliciting that certificate, and now you're going to do a bid sheet for it, and you're going to write it up, and you're going to display it with a pizza box to promote it. you're going to take all sorts of time with it. That volunteer could have just given you $15. If you do end up with a bunch of items that are under $100, consider doing one of these three things. So one thing is that you can have a raffle, and you can have a lot of items in the raffle and just ask people to buy raffle tickets for a chance to win one of these prizes. The other thing is you can package it all together in a basket. So, here you see they got a pound of coffee, they got some mugs, they got some cookies, they got an espresso maker, they got some dish towels. They put it all together in this coffee basket, and they put a over $100 value onto it. And then one of the things that I find really fun is surprise grab bags, where you have a table, people can come up and they can give you whatever price tag it is, $50, $25, and the idea is that they pick one box, and everything that they get is worth at least what they paid, but some can be worth significantly more, up to $200 or $250. So that's kind of exciting. It's kind of fun for people. And then also I just want to remind you that while you are doing this, leverage your time. So if people are out there getting a candy donation, they might ask, would you donate truffles that we could give to our guests as favors? If they're getting wine donated for a wine item, they might ask, could you donate wine for our reception? Could you donate wine for our dinner? It's fairly easy to get wine donations, water donations, and even cocktail liqueur donations. For a couple of years, there was a company out here that was promoting black vodka. And it was pretty weird, but we got it for free, and we had all sorts of free cocktails made out of the black vodka, which was really kind of fun for people. So don't forget that while people are out and about, they can help you get items that are things that you would otherwise have to buy. And I guess I would just leave you with persevere. You want to think of your silent auction as an experience, really experience, not just money. It's something that people are going to enjoy that builds over time. So they take years to really hit their stride. And one organization I worked with, the first silent auction that we did raised $13,000 out of a total event tally of $350,000. And I had really been encouraging for years, like, let's add a money-making event. Let's add something. We've got all these people in the room. Let's add something. And people really didn't want to add money. But we did it. And it didn't raise that much money the first year because people had been coming to our gala for years. They weren't used to being asked to also bid on items. Some people thought we were nickel and diming them. We almost gave up because it was a lot of work. But we surveyed all of the attendees, and net, a lot of other people thought it was a great addition to the night's entertainment. They really enjoyed it. Fast forward 15 years, that same organization, the auction is now the centerpiece of their gala. It's a primary method of entertainment. The guests love it. Attendance has doubled, and the event is now raising $1 million, of which a large chunk of that is auction revenue. So you may not raise hundreds of thousands overnight, but if you put your best feet forward in securing and describing and displaying your items in a manner that really appeals to your target audience, you really do have to get in the mind of what will our people like. Then you really will thrive. Donor-centric auctions are really a win-win-win. They're a win for your bidder. They're a win for the donors who see that their items sold really well, and they're a win for your organization. And each year, you'll get better and better and better. So I do want to take some time for questions. I want to thank you for doing the important work that you do, for being here today. And I want to thank Bloomerang for having me, and I want to just take one last second to encourage you, if you're not a member of Clarification School, I provide tons of content based on my 3 decades in the trenches, as well as everything I'm learning now. Lots of new stuff, lots of changes, post-digital revolution. And I would love to have you as a member, and you will also get some free bonuses, not just when you sign up, but all throughout the year. So, Stephen, do we have some questions?
Yeah, we got lots of good questions. I think you got people's juices flowing, Claire, so thank you. Lots of good info. I'm going to be looking at the next charity auction I go to a little bit more critically, thanks to you. So this is awesome. I knew this would be good. Yeah, we got some questions here. We got some time for questions here. Got some good ones. Just going to kind of roll through them. Claire, lots of people. I'm going to combine a couple questions. Lots of people are kind of asking about balance in terms of quantity of items. Is there a formula based on the amount of attendees to item quantity? What's your advice there on how many you should actually have out on those tables?
Well, there's not a formula. I mean, there's a lot of common sense that comes into this. But again, if you have 100 people and you have 100 items, that's too many items. Because, it's like 1 item per person. But you don't want to have so few items that it feels like it's just a little aside, that they're not really at an auction. And it makes it look a little pathetic, like you couldn't really get enough items. But like this auction that I've been going to for years and years and years, this year they had 50% less items than they usually have. And people were complaining because they got used to a certain amount of fun. And it wasn't as much fun because they went through the tables pretty quickly and then they were done. And so, some of it's also expectations. So, I wish I could say, oh yeah, you want, 40%, if you have 100 people, you want 40 items. I can't say that. It does really depend. And a lot is also your space. You have to be able to display the items. People have to be able to get to the items. If you have so many people crowded in the room that they can't even move from where they're drinking cocktails and talking with their friends to get to the item, then those items are not going to sell because they can't get to them. So again, part of the auction is figuring out when people are going to bid and can you get them back out there to bid again. So I did an event for years where we had all of the auction items in the reception area and people were bidding during the cocktail hour. Then they went into the ballroom for the rest of the program, and we found that even though we told them they could go in and out during the course of the evening, they didn't. So what we did was we started a dessert buffet after dessert, where it was after we had like an honoree program and dancing, to try to get them from the dancing room back out into the foyer where there would be, and this is where you leverage your donations. We had a whole buffet of donated treats, cupcakes and cookies and candy, and then we had coffee out there, and it was in the middle of the auction area. So people went out there to get a little treat and a cup of coffee, and then they started bidding on the items again. And that really got the items bid up. So you do want to think about that.
Wow.
I mean, yeah.
Very cool. Claire, we've had some people asking about sort of items that are like hotel stays, maybe even like trips to places. Any advice on getting maybe hotels, maybe even airlines to donate those items as auction items?
Yeah. So airline tickets are increasingly tough to get. If you really want to go for those, the best way is to go direct to the airline. Most of them have some kind of community relations department whose purpose is to give back to the community. Some airlines will actually give you funding. Some will give you tickets. Some will do both. But often they have a lot of restrictions. Some of them will focus only on their hub cities where most of their employees live and work, or they'll pick a few fields of interest. We want to help children, or we want to help homeless, or whatever it is. And if you don't fall into those guidelines, then you really don't have a chance. The thing to know is that airlines get hundreds of requests every week. So you
Okay.
really want to read their guidelines before you apply. You should generally plan to apply up to 3 months ahead of time. But you could also ask your volunteers or other people that you're connected to donate miles to you. And that was really popular. That was very popular some years back. One caveat on that, in my experience, I have found that redeeming donated miles is getting increasingly tricky because there's a lot of flights that aren't available. And so that can end up leaving your donors a bit disgruntled. So again, sometimes if you have a connection with a travel agent or something, you can get something. But I kind of stay away from the airline thing myself unless you have a really, really good connection. In terms of getting vacation stays, remember that a commercial resort is a business, and they give out of enlightened self-interest. So you have to always ask, what is in this for them? Now, if you have somebody on your committee who goes there every year or 4 times a year, they're going to give them something because they want to keep a good customer happy. So getting these kinds of donations really is in large part tied to the contacts of the people who are soliciting donations on your behalf. The other thing I always get is I get an overnight stay from the hotel. If you're having it at a hotel venue, get an overnight stay from them, or maybe 2 nights.
Good idea.
Or a night with dinner in their restaurant or something like that, because their other interest is in developing potential new customers. And if you can tell them that there's going to be a lot of folks at your event who meet their target audience demographic, then you also have a better chance. And then I guess finally I would go back to the private lodging idea. Is again what I suggest is survey everybody who's close to you, your committee members, your parents, your staff, and do any of them have vacation homes? Do they have rentals? Do they have timeshares where they can donate a week or a weekend?
Very cool. I love the hotel room or the venue idea. I might try that myself for events that I put on. Here's one from my buddy Meg down in St. Louis. I think that's the same Meg. How do you decide the starting bid amount? So that first amount, the lowest amount on an item. Should you go lower than its value? Should you go for its actual value? How do you decide on that amount?
Yeah. Well, you should absolutely go lower than its value, with the exception of the restaurant gift certificates if you've got a bunch of them together. But generally you want to open the bidding at about 30 to 40% of the retail value. You can go lower than that for some low price types of items where you know people are going to buy it because it's a $25 gift certificate, but you really shouldn't be having it.
Right.
But you can also go lower sometimes. There's 2 theories. Start at 30 to 40% because you really don't want to get lower than that. But there's also the theory of go lower so that people start the bidding and then they start to get emotionally attached to the item. So as the bidding increases, they end up bidding more than they thought they would because by then they're already emotionally attached. But for items that you know are going to sell really well, I would start at the higher point, more the 40% of retail. You don't want to start any higher than that because then it doesn't look like they're going to get a bargain. The other thing about pricing items is you want to have predefined bid increments. So if you're using
you read my mind.
If you're using auction bid sheets, you will say like increments of $5, $10. Usually the increment should be like 10% of your starting bid, although it would be a lower percentage for higher priced items. So, the percentage would be lower, but the amount would be higher. So
Makes
Some
sense.
items, the increment is $10, others it's $25, others it's $50. What you really don't want people doing is nickel diming, seeing that there's a $65 bid and then they bid $66, because that's just
right.
annoying. It's just annoying to the person who bid 65 because they would have bid 66, And then you want to, if you're going to offer an immediate buy it now, which is a good thing to do, if there, happens to be somebody who just wants that no matter what, then you have an immediate buy it now price that's at 150 to 200% of the retail value. I would not necessarily do that on every item, because items that are really competitive, like restaurants and stuff like that, for them, if you're going to do it at 200% of retail value. So if somebody really wants to go to the French Laundry, they'll bid, 1,000 instead of 500, because they consider the rest a donation and they really want to go. But for the most part, you don't want it to be so low, and I've been to auctions like this, where by the time I start looking at the items, half of them are already sold for buy it now. And that's no fun. And then
I don't think I've ever seen a buy it now option. That's great.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that.
Do that. Because people are also, remember, they're bargain hunting, but they're also thinking of this as a donation. So if they see something they really want, why not buy it now? They get it, and they get to give you the donation, and then they're done for the evening. They don't have to think about, what else am I going to get because it's for a good cause.
Makes sense.
And then one other thing on putting amounts on priceless items, quote unquote priceless items, one of a kind experiences. Actually, not everything is priceless. So, like, I was just at an auction where they had 3 months of cookies baked by, a teacher or something like that, and you got basically 2 dozen cookies once a month for 3 months, and they said priceless. Well, it's really not. I mean, there is a market value on 24 cookies times 3. So some of these things you can, like, even for sports memorabilia, you can look on eBay and stuff like that and put a starting bid on it. Even with dinner for the mayor, you can put an educated guess on there of what you think your donors will pay. Because if you put priceless, often they have no idea where to begin. And you want to give them some kind of idea. And also, if you solicited a walk-on part, that's a big deal. And you know that you don't want to sell it for less than a certain amount. Because if you do, you're going to burn your bridge with that studio or whoever gave it to you. Because they're going to know, well, we sold it for $10,000 or $5,000 at this other auction, and you guys only sold it for $800. So don't start the bidding there. Start the bidding at $2,000.
That makes sense. Well, we've probably got time for one more question. Since we're on the topic, Nicole's one is pretty interesting. What if the donor of the item insists on setting the price? Do you recommend ceding that control to the item donor, or should you maybe put your foot down and say, thanks for the item, we'll take it from here, or whatever?
Yeah.
It's a fun one.
Well, again, a lot that depends on the item. If it's an item where it's going to sell well, or you're pretty sure that it is, and you think the value that they're putting on it is more or less reasonable, and otherwise you wouldn't get it, you could go with it. I mean, maybe it's the one item that you have that's at 50% of retail value. But if you know that they're going to put something really, really high on there that's not going to sell, I would tend to say, hey, we want this to get a lot of bids. We want to get a lot of value. We don't want people just walking right by and saying, oh, that's too steep. We're not going to bid on that. So, you can talk to them. They are people, usually. I mean, or you could suggest another item, even a lower priced item sometimes. I mean, you have to use your brain sometimes. It's like, it seems like it's going to be worth more because they're giving you a $10,000 package and they don't want you to sell it for anything less than $8,000. But if no one's going to bid on it, you might be better off getting the $4,000 item that somebody will actually buy. It's a judgment call, and you're going to make some mistakes, and it's okay to make some mistakes. I mean, the one thing that we didn't touch on that I would like to touch on before we leave is the idea of purchasing things on consignment. Because a lot of people feel like, oh, well, we have to have a vacation package, but we don't know anybody, we don't have anybody. So they go to one of these companies that sell you things on consignment. And there's a couple of problems with this. First of all, I find that volunteers will suggest this to you because it puts the burden of solicitation on staff, and it gets them off the hook from actually soliciting a true donation.
Yeah.
Second, think about it. These people sell you something. They're not going to sell you something for a price at which they're going to lose money. So often they will put a value on the package that is the inflated rack rate. And then that means that your donor probably could have gone and gotten that rate themselves if they had gone online and done a little bit of research. So afterwards they buy it, and then they have to work with the company to redeem it. And sometimes these companies can be hard for donors to work with. And it's hard for them to find a date that works or a venue that works, and it leaves the donor really unhappy. I have had to go back and refund donors money for vacation packages, and we just ended up with nothing. And the donors were kind of disgruntled. And the other thing is, to me, a little bit of an ethical dilemma, because whatever money you pay the consignment company disappears from the rest of the auction. So the donor thinks that you got $6,000 from them, but once you pay your fees back to the consignment company, you've raised only $1,000. Now that other $5,000 might have been spent by people, on actual donated items, and you'd have received the full amount. Plus, in the interest of transparency, I really have a little bit of a problem with it, because the donor thinks that their full $6,000 is going to your cause, but it's not. So, again, if you are going to get a consignment item, definitely, start the bidding at 20% above your cost. Don't start it at your cost, because you do want to get something out of it.
Well, this was great, Claire. I think you and I could probably talk about this all day, but we did say we'd go to 2:15, and we're right up against it. So any last words? How can people get a hold of you? They should sign up for Clarification School and your awesome newsletter. I'm going to put in a plug for that myself, but I'll let you do the same.
Yeah. Well, I would say really just plan ahead so you can think about how you can use the auction to delight your guests. A lot of special event fundraising for me is how you make your donors feel, how you make them feel the minute they walk into the room, how you make them feel while they're in the room, and how you make them feel when they walk out of the room. And I've actually written an article about this that you guys can find on the Bloomerang website this month. But remember that if this is a form of entertainment, you want to have entertaining items. And I don't mean like funny ha-ha like that antique rat brooch. I mean like, wow, this is fun. There's all sorts of different things that I would like. And so think about the items you want for that purpose. Remember that not all items are created equal. Think about the people that can help you get these kinds of items. Remember that just having one person solicit items, one volunteer, one staff person, is going to kill that person. And you're just going to get one person's taste and one person's connection. So kind of spread the wealth and use your auction to really rev up excitement internally and externally. Because if you do that, then you're going to keep people coming back to your event year after year, looking for another great, fun experience.
Love it. This is awesome, Claire. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you all for being here.
I'm going to check the numbers, but I think this was our biggest webinar ever. It must be event season or something. So this is really cool.
Everybody
great advice.
has to do events because their volunteers always say, let's put on a show.
Yep. Well, good luck with your events if you got one coming up here soon. Maybe you got one in the fall. But you're all set for the auction item piece at least. But good luck with the rest of it. We got some great resources on our website as well. You can keep learning more. Claire is a frequent blogger on our blog as well. So if you like this advice, you'll find lots of other topics from her there too. We got some great webinars coming back. Claire's going to come back, I think, next month. I think we're back in May. I'll have to check the calendar. But once a week for us, so 1 week from today, we've got John Hayden, a social media expert, great guy, one of my favorites. He's going to talk about how you can use Facebook Live specifically. Got some great examples and case studies, so check that one out. Lots of other webinars you can register for. Check out our webinar page. Hopefully we see you again some Thursday, maybe even next week. So Claire, I'll see you in a couple days in New Orleans. And
I will.
The rest of you.
And anybody else who's there, stop by. I'll be presenting on Tuesday.
Go see her on Tuesday. Check the schedule. You got to go to Claire's session for sure. And for the rest of you, we'll see you hopefully next week. If not, some other Thursday is cool too. Have a good weekend. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you again soon.